Hello, Nemesis. This is the Daniel's Emesis podcast.
Taking a new turn.
I'm going to move away from the fiction and look at what I want to term ambient podcasting. I want to focus on the textures of the sounds rather than the contents of the words. I want to have a podcast where you can tune in and out, but is always tickling a part of your mind. In other words, I know I have nothing to say. I just want to dress up my blandness. If you're not sure about this, come back in 10 episodes' time. I'll probably have shaped these ideas into something decent by then. I'm gonna call this
Daniel's Nemesis.
Verbal Emesis.
My neurospicy
week.
My neurospicy week. I was very worried about New Year's Eve. Living in an apartment, I expected a lot of parties around me. Fortunately, that didn't happen. I was able to sit in bed quite quietly listening
to Sherelle on 6 Music
as the year ticked over. However, just the anticipation kept me tense, and there were a few little freakouts as I got fixated on a future injustice that never happened.
Recently getting a conditional offer for a job?
I was sent a questionnaire from my future employers about how well the recruiting process went. One question was about communication, and I don't even know 100% that I have the job yet. Having been the holiday season, there has been no communication the last few weeks. A second question was about the start date, and I don't know when that will be. A third question is whether or not the actual demands of the job match the information in the job posting. How am I to know? That's only something I can answer once I've started doing the job. Am I supposed to just lie and say 5 out of 5 in all areas? I don't understand why I've been sent this yet. I read Fern and Brady, Strong Female Character, an autobiography focusing on her autism as a TV stand-up comedian. I kept worrying that if I don't have as many meltdowns as she reports, I can't be neurodivergent. Otherwise, there were a lot of very relatable experiences that I've had on more than one occasion. Then she mentioned how she has started stimming and walking more, amongst other forms of exercise, as she tracks what causes and helps stop meltdowns. I've been taking nightly walks for well over a decade now. I've been using stim toys a lot recently. I can't get them out of my hands. Her doing what I've naturally been doing for 12 years means the frequency of her meltdowns is about on par with mine. A good book. Culture review. I've been watching a lot of Bob Mortimer's and Paul Whitehouse's Gone Fishing. Really, I just have it on in the background and tune in and out. However, it does look stunning. The BBC has certainly invested in camera crews that know how to capture picturesque scenes. I bypass the obvious fact that every conversation is staged for the cameras and just allow 2 comedians gently chiding each other to amuse me. It's my only concession to the
comedian plus other travels to locations
for aspirational viewers to wish they had a similar life. I have no interest in fishing.
I watched 2004's The Machinist, directed by Brad Anderson, written by Scott Koser, and starring Christian Bale.
Having worked out the end of film twist early on, it was then a matter of waiting for how the plot details were slotted in.
A lot of the mysteries were poorly executed.
I wondered if this was about schizophrenia, in which case it was a bit exploitative.
Turns out, it's just about someone who deserves their comeuppance.
But at least the punishment comes from an actual crime, and not very slightly deviating from social norms.
Any movie that begins with a big scene from the start of the third act to gain audience interest is not going to be good.
My week.
My week.
Finished the latest draft of my novel. I should be getting into the next draft. Instead, I'm here playing around with this. Although not this week, I've been volunteering at a hospital radio station recently. I'm just at the training stage and there's nothing remarkable to say, though I've been put on the spot on the microphone a couple of times. Most notably when the host of the show I was sitting on was talking about pantomimes, then out of the blue asked me why pantomime tickets are so hard to get these days. I haven't been to a pantomime in years, so I just blurted out, because of the families. Come on, guys. If you're going to ask a guest something, check if they know about the subject first. It embarrasses me, it embarrasses you, and is awkward for the listener as well. I did take control for 15 minutes on one show. I'd planned something and had little links scripted, but none of the songs I wanted to play were on the broadcast system. Instead, I would have to play them on my iPad. Before doing my takeover, I quickly built a new 15 minutes, but then realised I had no idea about all the buttons on the control panels. I'd been shown, but never had a chance to play with them. As the song before my first link was playing, I just sat there. I was scripting, but not the words I would say. I was mentally practicing the movements my hands would make, where the switches were, and the order I needed to do things. I can only describe it as a pilot in a commercial aeroplane flicking off hundreds of lights. When it came to doing my link, I completely dissociated. I have no idea what I said. I just remember drifting into my mind at one point to tell myself I was talking too fast, and then I'd finished. During the next song, the main host told me it would be wise to mention the socials, destroying the next part of the verbal script I had. I quickly wrote down the details, and this at least formed something of a script for me. Back on the mic, I was reading the phone number and had no idea if the numbers coming out of my mouth were the same as I had written them down. If I did a third link or not, I have no recollection. I was outside of my world. The pilot didn't start flicking on switches in his aircraft until after my 15 minutes of hospital radio fame were over. So I'll be back for more training once the holiday season is over. And that's it. That's where I shall leave things for this episode. Until next time, TTFN.